Hello guys, this is Olayeni Dear Kola Daniels, and welcome to another episode of Dear Ko Talks Law. On today's episode of Dear Ko Talks Law, we would be talking about contract law, and in this class we'll be talking about types of consideration. In my last class, I discussed the definition of consideration according to Lush J in Korean Misa, and also the Nigerian case which I cited in my last class. In this particular lecture, we will discuss the types of consideration. There are two types: executed and executory consideration. But before I move into the lecture itself, if this is your first time of coming to my channel, I want to say a very big welcome. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. Please make sure that you click the subscribe button, and also make sure that you click the notification bell, so that anytime I release a video of this nature which would be of benefit to you, then you are going to be one of the first set of people to watch that particular lecture. And also, most importantly, if you are on LinkedIn, make sure that you follow my LinkedIn profile, Olayeni Dear Kolola. That's the name of my LinkedIn profile. So with that, let us go straight to our lecture for today. And what are we talking about today? We are talking about the two types of consideration that exist. We are talking about executed consideration. We are talking about executory consideration. And then what is the difference between the both of them, and how exactly do they play in court? Do not forget that in my last class, when I was defining consideration to you, I also told you that the second rule of consideration is that consideration must move from the promisee, and I explained that to mean that whoever seeks to enforce a contract must have furnished consideration. Do you understand that? That was the explanation that I gave in the last class. So then, if we are talking in the context of the two types of consideration, one being executed, which is done right now, the other being executory, which is done in the future, how then will you be able to enforce a contract in such type of nature? And that is what I will be talking about today. But let's go to my notes to continue with the lecture. Now, consideration may be, number one, executed or executory. Consideration is executed where one party performs an act in fulfillment of a promise made by the other. Now, a very good example would be reward cases, that is unilateral contract. Now, let us imagine that Ade offers a reward of 100,000 naira to anybody who provides certain information, or that he will walk from Ibadan to Maiduguri. I think he's about to run mad, because the sun that will beat you on the road there. Okay. Or if he finds a lost dog, or if he produce the killer of a minister assassinated, if you know the gun that you take, no who kill him. Okay, so moving on. But you understand what I'm saying when you are saying that, oh, okay, I am going to give 100,000 naira to anybody who will walk from Ibadan to Maiduguri. That is, you want to kill the person, or someone who finds a lost dog, or someone who can produce the killer of a minister who has been assassinated. Now, in that particular instance, the person who is going to be entitled to the 100,000 naira cannot just enter the court. He hasn't done any of it. He just said, my lord, I want to enforce a contract. You want to enforce a contract that you have not done. The dog that is missing, you have not gotten it, and you want to enforce the contract. The killer of the minister that was assassinated, you have not found the person or any information that can lead into catching the person. The walk that they told you to walk from Ibadan to Maiduguri, you have not walked, and you are here saying that you want to enforce the contract. No, my dear, that's not how contract law works. Go back to school. If you are going to enforce a contract, let's start with an executed contract. I told you that consideration must move from the promisee, the person who wants to enforce it. You must have done that thing. You must have gotten the dog. You must have gotten the person who killed the minister. You must have, walked from Ibadan to Maiduguri before you can decide to enforce a contract of this nature. That is an executed contract. I know that I am talking in context of unilateral contract, just like the case of Khalil and Kabolik. If you haven't learned the case of Khalil and Kabolik, you can go back to my previous lectures. I discussed Khalil and Kabolik in them, but let us continue with my notes. Now, in other words, one person promises to pay the sum of money if the other will do or forbear to do something without making promise. With this, I know that you understand, how unilateral contract works, executed contract. Although when you are talking about executed consideration, although I use the example of unilateral contract, note that it is not limited to unilateral contract. When you are talking about executed consideration, it means that, in fact, when we go to supermarkets, everything we do there, we furnish executed consideration because it is done there and there. I want to buy Nutella. For those people who use Nutella, some people do not like it. Some people prefer butter or jam, but I like Nutella. So I want to get Nutella, and then I get to the market. I went to the supermarket. I took the Nutella from the shelf, and I went to pay for it immediately. It's not the one that they will say, "Oh, please bring me Nutella." When you're talking about executory contract, is where you contract with somebody. That is, your birthday is in 2 weeks' time. You've told the cake seller, I want to make 40 layers of cake. I want to kid them. I want to show them that, you see, I am turning 40. No be small. You get. Now, with the whole effigy that you decided to do, with the whole effigy, you told somebody, make sure that the cake is 40 layers and all that and all that and all that. Now, you would note that the consideration there is not on the spot like it was in the supermarket. The consideration there is something that you are expecting in 2 weeks' time. Do you understand? Those are executory consideration. But before we go to executory consideration, before we discuss it, I want you to understand executed consideration. So executed consideration are those consideration that you do on the spot. I went to the supermarket to buy Nutella, I got it on the spot. I went to the market to buy a car, I got it on the spot. I went to the this to get that, I got it on the spot, and I paid on the spot. That's an executed consideration. Do you understand that? Now, because it is executed, since I've paid for it, I have furnished consideration for it. Anything that is wrong, I can sue because consideration has moved from me. Do you understand that? Anything that is wrong at all with that thing that I decided to buy, I can sue the company or sue the party that I bought it from because consideration has moved from me. But can we say the same thing about an executory consideration? Can a party sue when something is wrong even though he hasn't furnished it, but there are promises to furnish? That's our question. So let us go to executory consideration. Now, consideration is executory where there is an exchange of promises to perform acts in the future. For instance, in a bilateral contract, are there promises to deliver goods to Bumi at a future date, and Bumi promises to pay on delivery? Executory consideration happens quite often in commercial transaction where the delivery and payment are to be made in future. Both parties become bound prior to contractual performances. In executory consideration, the exchange of promises that constitute the contract as the whole of the transaction is in the future. However, in executed consideration, as illustrated by reward cases, the finder of these goods is taken to have accepted the offer as well as furnished consideration by the single act of returning the goods to the offeror. In this case, liabilities are standing on the side of the offeror. Now, you understand what executory consideration is. So, for example, I'm 40 years old. No, please, I'm not 40. I'm a very young, sweet man. So, please, don't think I'm 40, but let us just use the illustration that I'm 40. Now, imagine that I'm 40 years old and I want to pepper them, I want to show that there is money, I went to rent hall, and then, like I said, I did the 40 layers cake. I want to show them pepper. And then, on the day, I told the person that as he delivers the cake, I'll pay. On the day of delivery, on the day of my birthday, hey, this person that slept and did not wake up on time and forgot that I was supposed to do birthday. That's why I started calling the person. She was asleep. I was calling the person. Jesus is Lord. I was exasperated. I was angry. Now, I did not pay, but there are promises made. can we say that in such a contract I can enforce it? That's the question. Can I enforce that contract in court? Can I collect the damages for a breach of contract of that nature? Because of the rule that consideration must move from the promisee, do you think that I can do that? No, I can't. Except it was a contract by deed, which is what I taught you in the last class. Where a contract is made by deed, consideration need not be furnished. But where there is no contract by deed, you must furnish consideration. And then if you want to sue on that contract, you must have moved consideration. Do you understand? Consideration must have moved from you. So I hadn't moved consideration. We only had offer and we had acceptance. Our consideration was executory, to be done in the future, in a later date. Where you haven't furnished consideration, you cannot go to court to ask the courts to enforce the contract or to seek damages or any other thing that you seek from the courts, specific performance if you want. We'll be discussing that, in subsequent sets of lectures. But I hope that you understand the types of contract that we have: executed and executory. I would have loved to quote a lot of cases on this, but don't worry, in subsequent set of classes, we'll be talking about each of the types of consideration and also, quoting cases to the effect. And with this, I hope that you totally understand the difference between executed consideration and executory consideration. I will see you in my next class, where I will be discussing the moral obligation, whether or not moral obligation would be valid consideration. That's what I'll be discussing in my next class. We'll be talking about the case of Falugi and Falugi, Barclays Bank and the rest. Those cases we'll be discussing in my next class. But do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Do not forget to click the like button. Do not forget as well to also click the notification bell so that when I release any video that you would want to watch, then you'll be one of the first set of people to watch it. And also, do not forget to follow me on LinkedIn if you're a member of LinkedIn. I will see you in my next class. Have a beautiful day.